the presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today to spend 30 minutes looking at the topic of Brexit. And how timely is that given the latest events of yesterday? The news, of course, that Theresa May has called a snap general election, despite original statements to the contrary, in what is considered to be a move to strengthen the government's hand ready for the negotiations ahead. So what are we going to cover in this call? Well, we're going to look at the issues businesses are facing in evaluating their medium and long-term plans ready for Brexit. We'll be looking at some short-term current implications that they're experiencing in this limbo period post-Article 50 and pre the final Brexit agreement. And also looking at the longer-term post-Brexit implications. My name is Karen Clark, and my role today is to take you through some key research Anna Plan has commissioned on this topic. Our survey reviewed 250 organisations across the UK to understand where they are with their planning for Brexit and to understand the key topics concerning many of them. I'll then be handing over to my colleague, Steve Taylor, who will provide a demonstration of the Anna Plan planning platform and how this enables businesses to model the potential implications on their business, to test different scenarios and evaluate the potential options. Now, not wanting to spoil any thunder, but the overall conclusions we'll be leading to are that businesses can make better use of the data available to them in planning for Brexit, that they need to empower the business users to have access to this information and to provide them with the tools to review the potential implications of Brexit thoroughly, ensuring that they can adjust business plans as the Brexit story unfolds. So to kick us off, of course, we've all been watching the news and following the progression of the Brexit talks. It is sure to be a roller coaster of activity that's going to keep us amused over the next coming months and years. Politically, we've already seen much positioning on both sides of the negotiation, with the UK government clearly indicating a hard Brexit position, and the EU negotiation team clearly making it clear that the deal must be worse for the UK outside compared to within the EU. Now, that's clearly positioning and negotiating, but it is a sign that for business, it's going to be a turbulent time with lots of uncertainty and risk as the markets respond to this political as well as the economic implications. I think a fine example, of course, was that of yesterday, with the immediate reaction to the election news, increasing the strength of the pound, but unnerving UK stocks and leaving the FTSE 2.5% weaker. So in planning for Brexit, it's clear that businesses need to look at short-term implications happening today, as well as the longer-term post-Brexit opportunities and threats. And these may well be quite different perspectives. I think another great example we've seen is the weakened pound having a positive impact on exports. Whilst longer-term, the implications of the customs agreements and possible tariffs could have a negative impact. Similarly, if we look at tourism, there's currently a boost thanks to the currency changes, whilst post-Brexit, there are concerns that the freedom of movement of people may impact the migrant workers employed within this sector. So short term, there's plenty for businesses to think about and be responding to today. Now, if we take a longer term perspective, following the exit, the impact for businesses and consumers will clearly depend upon the nature of the agreement reached by the UK government, assuming there is an agreement. However, it is clear that businesses can't wait and need to plan for these outcomes now. Many, of course, are already adjusting their plans. Supply chain is a great example. We saw this earlier in the year in the news with the acquisition of Vauxhall by PSA, with post-Brexit supply chain issues factoring high in these discussions. Indeed, many businesses with complex supply chains across Europe will be watching really closely for the impact of those customs and tariff agreements. I think location is another key topic. We've seen some businesses already reviewing their operations and establishing new European headquarters outside the UK, such as the news that Barclays has selected Dublin as its location for its new European HQ. This is, of course, creating huge implications for workforce requirements, both in the UK and elsewhere in Europe. And similarly, similar businesses, of course, making similar moves, raising the concerns about the availability of the appropriately skilled workforce in some of those key locations. And those businesses, of course, with a reliance on migrant workers here in the UK, such as leisure, food production, construction, big industries in the UK, will be looking at the implications that these changes in the freedom of movement of workers might have on their operations long term. Now, there are lots of solutions, of course, to these potential outcomes, but whether relocating to new premises, sourcing new suppliers, or automating these manually intensive processes, there are implications for the wider business, if you like, knock-on effects. And of course, like all change, there's going to be a lead time to implement. Therefore, businesses need to be considering these potential outcomes and scenarios and understand the wider impact across their whole business. So looking at all these issues, it really led us to our study. It made us wonder where businesses actually are with their planning today, and what are the challenges that they're facing in evaluating these topics. So we decided to commission the survey to find out just that. We surveyed 250 customers and asked them a number of questions about their current approach to planning for Brexit. Now, you can find the whole survey on our website, but in summary, it's perhaps no surprise, given all the uncertainty we've talked about, that many are struggling to know what to plan. So let's look at the results of our survey. So the first questions we asked were probing the overall preparedness of companies for Brexit and the level of concern about the implications. Now, this survey was taken just before Article 50 was triggered, but as you can see, at that time, many businesses were yet to start planning or were unsure of what to plan. In fact, as you see, 44% of those surveys said they hadn't even started planning at that point. 77% were concerned about the impact of Brexit on their business, no surprise there, but many were unsure where to turn to for guidance, and advice within or outside of their organisation was questioned. Sadly, 33% of respondents said they didn't trust anyone for guidance of the post-Brexit implications, yet they did recognise the role of the CEO in managing the impact for their business. So overall, this part of the survey indicated that respondents were not really confident that their organisations were ready to handle the significant changes that they foresaw that Brexit was going to bring. When we asked business to share their major concerns about Brexit and the obstacles they perceived, these included loss of access to the single market, which concerned 31% of our respondents, with main concerns focused on the implications of those customs union or trade agreements, issues around, of course, import and exports, regulatory changes, and red tape was top of mind for many of our respondents. Access to the migrant workforce and implications of this, as we've touched on, finding the right staff in the right locations, cost of materials and services with inflation risk, regulations and tariffs, and 26% were concerned about exchange rate fluctuations and uncertainty resulting from this, including the cost of borrowing and financing their current plans. Interestingly, many felt that not having the expertise to deal with these challenges was a limiting factor in them preparing for Brexit. In probing the current effects of the vote for Brexit, again, not surprising, whilst many businesses were already feeling a negative impact of exchange rate changes, others, in fact nearly 1 in 3, were seeing benefits from the immediate impact. Now, clearly not all businesses are the same. The impact of currency, supply chain, inflation, regulations and skills will all vary dependent upon the type of business, its geography and nature of its operations. There is no blueprint for Brexit, unfortunately. There's no silver bullet, if you like. What businesses need to look at are the impact of these potential changes on their own business parameters and have the ability to model scenarios and plan for the various outcomes. I think those businesses that do this well may be the ones that not only ride this period of uncertainty, but perhaps manage to take advantage of the opportunities that Brexit will bring. However, sadly, our report also showed that many businesses felt ill-equipped to look at these scenarios. Spreadsheets everywhere. I'm sure that none of us are surprised that Brexit planning is falling back onto disconnected spreadsheets and collaboration mainly by email. Tools I think are completely inadequate for the job ahead. Our survey showed a third of business users reported that they were struggling to access their data, and the majority did not have adequate tools to then use the data available to model the range of potential implications. Furthermore, they were unable to effectively collaborate across the business on the interdependency of these various scenarios. So in summary, the businesses surveyed indicated concerns about their ability to plan adequately for Brexit and the availability of the data and the tools to enable them to do this effectively. So in evaluating the results, we thought, well, what can we offer advice for you in preparing for Brexit? So we came up with 3 steps that we think will ensure businesses have better agility in how they can prepare. So firstly, we recommend that and believe that businesses should need the tools which are designed to meet the modern demands that this really agile and rapidly changing. We believe that business must introduce a much more connected approach to planning, which really extends across departments, across geographies, and across business functions, with the same data source and real-time information on which to make decisions. And thirdly, we believe that business leaders need to be the ones with access to this information. It can't be locked away. Responsiveness will be key as circumstances change. Essentially, business leaders need solid guidance based on facts and not best guesses. So this vision of connected planning is the reality that Anaplan offers its customers today. However, we're not going to take up too much time during this session talking about Anaplan, as we want to give you the time to look at some practical examples. Putting it simply, connected planning means that providing the right, accurate and real-time data to the right people across the organisation, across the different geographies, functions and organisational levels, but in a connected manner. This connection means that plans are interrelated, meaning that decisions and all their implications can be evaluated together. All of those knock-on effects considered. For example, at a high level, decisions on supply chain processes, such as manufacturing locations, may have an impact on resources, which in turn has an impact on facilities, on training, etc., etc. Critical changes in one area should auto-feed to update plans elsewhere, so full interdependencies are understood, all with the speed of real time. This, of course, is a long way from the disconnected spreadsheet planning process our survey indicated that many businesses are struggling with today. But we believe this is what is required to stay ahead of this Brexit process and the turbulent times ahead of us all. So what we want to do today is to give you a short view of what connected planning looks like. And Steve, can I ask you to just talk through everybody through what we're going to show them for the rest of the day?
Yes, so as Karen highlighted, there's no magic blueprint for preparing your business for Brexit. Every business will behave and be affected in different ways by Brexit. But what I'm going to show you today is just an example of how a consumer packaged goods company is dealing with Brexit. So I've put this together just to highlight some of the key areas that may have an impact in some businesses across the UK. So looking at the steps we're going through in this little demo, we're going to have a look at how we can realign our growth strategy as we perhaps move away from EU markets and maybe towards our friends further afield. We're going to align our markets to that strategy. So we're going to go down to country level or even to store level and start looking at where we're focusing our sales effort, our marketing effort. We'll look at the impact. We'll start doing some sensitivity analysis around drivers like inflation, import and export tariffs, and exchange rate fluctuations. We'll start to realign our supply chain. We'll look at perhaps looking at getting our raw materials from other sources, perhaps cheaper. We'll look at product and market profitability to try and assess whether our pricing is in line with costs and whether we're achieving the margin we need to in specific markets. And finally, we'll start to look at some of the challenges around workforce. So we may need to recruit more UK staff to replace some of the EU migrant workers who perhaps won't be available to us post-Brexit. Let's dive in and have a look at Anaplan and have a look at an example of how we could start to work with these aspects. So I've done all this in one example Anaplan model, but Anaplan being a very flexible platform, typically this would be done across the business with separate models, perhaps for my financial view of the world, my workforce planning view of the world, my trade promotions. But let's look at it under this one umbrella. I'm starting off here with my global sales plan. Now I'm looking at my plan, which was actually put together before Article 50 was triggered, and things have changed since then. So rather than change my plan, I'm going to jump across and look at a different version. I'm going to look at my scenario, which I've pre-populated by copying all my plan data into a new version. It took me a couple of seconds. So in there, we want to change where our growth aspirations lie. Well, one thing's clear, our aspirations to grow within the EU are probably a little bit ill-founded. So I'm going to change that. We're actually going to reduce our revenue within the EU. So it's going to reduce by 2% in 2018, 3% in 2019, and it's going to reduce by 1% in 2020. So gradually moving away from that market. But what we are doing is we're going to increase our domestic revenue there. So let's increase our UK revenue by 4, 6, and 8%. But where we're really harvesting the benefits are trading with our non-EU partners. So in 2018, we'll make our first footsteps into that, 5% growth. 2019, start trading with maybe the Far East. We're going to start to see about double-figure growth there. We're going to see a 10% growth rate. Bring us up to 2020, hopefully post-Brexit, we'll start to be bringing in 15% growth there. Those are our ambitions there. I just want to make a note for myself because those are fairly ambitious targets. I'm going to just say driven by Far East. So when my colleagues come in and access this data, perhaps there's some sign off, they can see my justification for the numbers there. Okay, I can see over on the right here, I can see how that's allocated down between my two product groups, hygiene and cosmetics. I'd like to filter that further down. We've got a big target to meet for our non-EU partners. Let's go and see how we're going to meet that. I'm going to take those numbers, I'm going to bring it down to a regional level. Now I'm looking at all the countries in which I operate, and I'm looking at the hygiene products. I'm focusing on them because they're the backbone of the business. Looking at that, there's a couple of things I want to play with. Well, we can see the EU's probably not as big as it used to be, but what I do want to do is I want to hold Scotland, not going to change that, and I'm also going to hold the USA. There's a lot of uncertainty over there as well as we have in Europe, so I'm going to hold that. We shouldn't make plans on that basis. What I do want to do is I really want to focus on China. So I'm going to, instead of 41 million coming from China, I'm going to make that 80 million. And I just wanted to reallocate my non-EU away from the US and towards China. So I'm reallocating, I'm changing the share of this cake. Okay, so get a better idea of how we're going to target it, where we're going to deliver in these sales targets. I could go and do the same thing across our different product brands, go and look across our cosmetics products. But let's move on to a different aspect. Let's start to look at our income statement, the core of the business, the finance view of the world. And I'm not going to just look at London. I'm going to come up from that particular store. We could look at the implications for England or the UK, but let's look across the whole company there. Now I'm looking at FY17 through to FY20, which hopefully encompasses the full period when we're going through the Brexit negotiations and hopefully when we come out the other end. Let's start flexing that a little bit. Looking over here on the right, I've got some of the drivers that are going to make changes to my worldview. UK, we've assumed is going to have inflation rates of 1% across those 4 years. I think that's ill-founded. I think it's going to go up to about 2% in 2018 and probably about 3% in FY19 before settling back down to 1% around FY20. The EU is going to have fairly constant. I don't envisage there's going to be a knock-on effect after Brexit. We won't have the Frexit or the Grexit that people are talking about. More of that later, perhaps. One area that is going to make a difference. Let's look at export tariffs. Jumping down the screen here. If we want to sell into our EU partners, we're going to have to pay some tariffs. Pretty likely. Theresa May may be a skilled negotiator, but it looks unlikely she'll be able to avoid any tariffs there. So let's put in a 2% tariff at the level there. Oh, I've just put 21% inflation on there. Let's put that back. Okay, fantastic. Let's put in a 2% tariff on France. In fact, that's going to go across all of our EU partners there, from Germany, Spain, and Italy as well. So let's put that across the board. We're now starting to see, highlighted in red and green, where that's had a positive or negative impact on our income statement. If I focus in FY18, where we're starting to see the real impact of both the inflation and the export tariffs, we can start to see a variance there. We can see where our scenario varies from our current pre-Brexit plan. So we're able to go in and start start looking at the impact of these things and maybe start mitigating them. More of that in a minute. I could go in and start looking through these numbers. If I go and look at my sales, I could right click on any number on this income statement, and I can start to drill down in that. Let's see where my EU numbers are coming from. So I can follow the numbers until I find the root cause of any changes there. I can follow them right to the root cause there, right down through the countries, down to the stores, down to the individual product level. Let's start to mitigate that slightly. If I start to look at my sales, I can see we've got a very different view of FY18 if we look at our plan data on the left-hand side waterfall chart and our scenario data. One other thing that's had an impact on us, currency rates. Well, at the moment we're looking at it in GBP. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to a euro view of the world. Okay, having changed that to euros, I want to go and see what the impact is of that currency change. So let's go and look at my currency rates. I'm going to focus on the euro, and I'm just going to peel that off. I'm going to bring that down the screen a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to change the euro. Let's see what year. Let's say in FY19, we expect there to be, as negotiations get into full flight, around April 2019, we expect the euro rate to go up to come down to 1.01. Okay, so that's going to take effect in April 19. And there we're seeing, not only in this chart are we seeing the impact as the currency exchange rate dips, we saw that, the more eagle-eyed amongst you would have spotted in the background, FY19 is adjusted to reflect a different exchange rate for the euro. Let's come back out of there. So we could have all sorts of sensitivity analysis around that. So we've seen lots of things that are challenges in there. We've got a massive change in cost of goods sold. We've got an 81 million change in that. Let's see if there's anything we can do about that. Let's jump in to look at our raw materials sourcing. So looking at the raw ingredients that go into our products, a lot of them are colours and aromas that come from our European partners. We've actually sourced a Scottish business that specialises in colours that would help us in our business. So rather than paying the import tariffs across from Italy, I'm going to change that. I'm going to start taking Scotland as our source for our colours that are going into our products. Now, because we've got the full bill of materials behind each of our products, that's going to feed through, and that's going to give an impact. That's going to mitigate the effect of that import tariff there. Okay, one last thing I'm going to do before I change that. Now, sometimes the best laid plans of mice and men go astray, to misquote the poet. In there, we're going to bring in another aspect, slightly unexpected. Let's suppose Theresa May's gambit with the June election's gone slightly wrong, and it triggers Scottish independence. What I'd like to do is just bring that into my plans. So I'm going to go behind the scenes, and I'm going to go and look at the lists that construct this model. The one I'm interested in is country. Now, at the moment, in here, Scotland is part of the UK. I'm going to take that out of the UK. It's not that easy in reality, I can assure you, and put it into our non-EU partners. Okay, so that will mean if we come back into our income statement, Scotland is now somewhere that we may have import and export tariffs with. So that export tariff there, I'm going to take that. Let's have an import tariff of 3% for Scotland, and we'll copy that across. So it's very easy not just to make changes to drivers, but also make changes to structures that are in there. So I can very easily add in new partners, change the way we look at things. Okay, so we're ready for anything. Let's move on. We've looked at the income statement, but I'd like to delve below the surface on that. Let's start to look at the matrix of our products, or brands rather, and the markets we operate in. If I move forward to 2020, when things should be starting to settle down, then I can start to see which of our brands are profitable and which are unprofitable within each market. I'm going to focus on Germany, I think. I'm going to focus on Clear Shine toothpaste. Okay, it's a very strong brand for us. Sells well in Germany. There's one SKU there that sells very well and is profitable for us. But the larger SKU, the larger packet of toothpaste or tube of toothpaste isn't very profitable. I can start to see the detail behind that. I can see the breakdown as we get from sales down to all the standard costs and inflation impact. So as we've been putting inflation, we've been putting tariffs in there. Anaplan is giving me a view of what the variance is and breaking it down by all the contributing factors. I'd like to play about with that. This particular SKU, we're selling a lot of it, but we're selling it at a loss. Let's go down and start adjusting that. perhaps because we're paying more export tariffs there, I can see that particular SKU, what's our sales, cost of goods sold and gross margin across each of my German stores. Remember, we're focused in Germany at the moment. I'd like to go in and make some changes to that. We're selling it at a loss, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the price on this. So I'm going to change that to €5 there, perhaps not enough. Let's take it up to €6 there. Now behind this, as we're making changes like this could tie in with other Anaplan models, which are around trade promotions. So we could use this to drive out volume uplifts, bring in price elasticity, and all that detailed science that helps us bring in an example which thoroughly reflects the real world business. Okay, so we've had a look at some of the impacts and seen what the changes are. Another area that Karen mentioned around migrant workers and being able to mitigate the impact of a less free-flowing workforce across the EU. We've started to make a strategy around this. So if I look at my Brexit strategy, that's a project I've kicked off here. We're going to have that, well, originally I said we're going to kick that off in August. Given the general election that's just been announced, I'm going to bring that forward to, let's kick that off in July 2017. Okay. What I need to do is think about the steps that I'm going to take, because we're going to lose a lot of our EU workers. We need to recruit from the UK population. So let's do some things to make that happen. I'm going to create some steps in here. Let's have some press ads. Okay. And this is going to have an impact on which of our KPIs, the best people. That's our process to recruit very effectively. John Melville's going to be in charge of this marketing. This advertising, and we're going to have that happen, when did we say? Let's say July the 20th, and we'll keep advertising until a couple of weeks later, let's say August the 17th. Now that's going to be aimed at which of our KPIs? It's going to be aimed at our recruitment efficiency. So that's starting to give us some impact there. What other steps we need to do? Well, in there we need to do things like, let's say milk rounds. So we're trying to improve our graduate recruitment within the UK. Again, it's going to be tied to some of our KPIs around workforce planning. Sam Smith, who works alongside John, be in charge of this. Milk rounds tend to happen around the start of term, so let's run those from the start of September through to the end of September. And again, what KPIs that's aimed at, let's have that aimed at, again, around recruitment efficiency. So as you can see, we're starting to add steps to this whole process, coming up with a strategy, tying it to numbers that will give us a return, a net present value, and an IRR around that. And we can even see a Gantt style chart down here that shows me the steps in that whole process. So we're no longer, as Karen said, we're no longer struggling to deal with inadequate tools like Excel. We've got a 21st century platform that allows us to formulate our strategy and monitor the impact of the unexpected on that strategy. So we've used a very simple demonstration around Anaplan to show how you can start to model your business and start to look at the possible impacts in the future from Brexit. Hopefully that's given you some ideas, very much just dipping our toe in the water and gives you a chance to think about how you could use this in your business. Karen.
Great, thank you, Steve. Well, we hope that's whetted your appetite to see a little bit more. So do please get in touch if you'd like to see a little bit more of that demonstration. So just to recap in closing, today we've looked at the results from our survey, which indicated that many businesses are still struggling with how to address Brexit through poor tools and the uncertainty, of course, that Brexit brings. We looked at some key issues concerning companies and how Brexit will have different implications dependent upon the nature of the company's operations. Therefore, there isn't a real blueprint for Brexit. We've suggested that there are 3 steps to improve your planning for Brexit. Firstly, providing modern tools. Secondly, providing a more connected planning approach across your organisation. And thirdly, giving that power and agility to the business users to make the informed decisions. We've taken a look at how Anaplan offers a connected planning approach, which allows you to model those scenarios and their implications across the various dimensions of the business. And most importantly, have this connected to ensure that all those interdependency of the different scenarios are understood. And in conclusion, I think Brexit clearly brings a lot of uncertainty for us all, but we believe that those businesses who have the ability to really connect their planning across their business will be better placed to adapt to the challenges that Brexit is going to bring. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and we hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.